It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the USA racquetball player Rhonda Rajsich. How are you doing today?
Doing great today, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to start playing professional racquetball?
Well, actually, I'll take you all the way back to the very beginning. I was about 2 years old when my parents joined a health club, and they stuck me in the nursery, and I figured out a way to sneak out unbeknownst to either of them. My father was just learning the sport of racquetball from my godfather, and my mom was a tennis player and also did aerobics and worked. I mean, my parents were both very active, athletic people their whole lives. So I got the good genes. But I found a way to sneak out, and I would just kind of wander around the gym until I figured out which racquetball court my father was on, and be like, oh, okay, he's on court too. And then I would run down and grab a basketball, which at the tender age of 2 years old was probably bigger than me. I'm carrying it like this. And I would just sort of keep an eye on court too. And when my dad was in between games, I'd run up and steal his racket and run on the court and start hitting around. And I think until I started doing interviews like this, as I got more successful in my racquetball career, I think both of my parents, neither of them realized that I was sneaking out of the nursery. I think my dad always thought my mom had taken me out. My mom probably always thought my dad had taken me out. But I figured out how to sneak by when another kid came in. So, but yeah, I would go and just hit around on the court. No idea what I was doing, just running around, chasing the ball, swinging the racket. My dad would come in, say, what are you doing out here, kid? Give the big people the racket back now. Come on. Where's your mother? And that's kind of how it all started. And then I said I would just go back down to the basketball court. And so pretty much my whole life I've been a multi-sport athlete. Racquetball and basketball are my two favorites. And I think I had intended on a professional basketball career. I mean, I played both sports all through school. I mean, my typical day, even as a grade school or junior high kid, was, I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to the gym. Not because my dad or my mom, nobody made me. I wanted to. I wanted to get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym and play racquetball and basketball and lift and whatever else I could squeeze in before school. And then I would go to class and then have basketball practice. And then we had actually started a junior team Arizona here in Phoenix, and I was the president of our junior team. And so for a certain amount of time, we would have racquetball practice twice a week as well. And then squeeze in some dinner and some homework and go to bed and do it all again the next day. I mean, that was pretty much my childhood, and I loved it. I think that really set the tone for the discipline I have now and that I've had throughout my career. It's why I love the process. It's a lot of people want the results, but they don't want to put in the work for the process. I actually love the process because I craved it as a child. And maybe it's because I'm an only child. Racquetball is the kind of sport where you can actually go in and hit around by yourself. Basketball, you can shoot around by yourself. It's annoying to go chase your own rebounds, but you can. I mean, I was able to do both, without anyone there to play with me, to play. Playing catch is one of my favorite things to do. Why? Because I never got to do it that much as a kid because I was alone so much. But yeah, so I would play racquetball and basketball pretty much every day in some fashion. Really believed I was going to play in the WNBA. I definitely believe I could have. In fact, no secret, I actually still want to. If anyone from the WNBA is listening, Phoenix Mercury, I will make shots for you and help you win. But I intended on playing basketball, and then I sort of not accidentally, I mean, of course it was a goal. I just didn't think I was going to do it that soon in my life. I qualified for the US adult national team, and I had made the junior US team for years until I aged out, but I didn't think I would qualify for the adult national team until after my basketball career was over, and then I focused full time on racquetball. And it ended up going the other way around. I qualified for the US adult team, and just sort of fortuitously, it happened where I went to national doubles, and there was a big meeting with USA Racquetball, which was USA Racquetball Association at the time. It was USRA, now it's USAR, and they had a meeting about women's racquetball specifically. And the content of this meeting was women's racquetball isn't dying, it's dead. We need to take it off life support and start over. And that's what they did. They took the Women's Pro Tour, the WIRT, and kind of started it all over from scratch, renamed it the LPRA. They had a 3-year contract with the LPRA that helped subsidize the amount of money that tournament directors would need to come up with in order to host a pro stop for those first 3 years. And we also toyed with the scoring system. We actually started out with the scoring system of ping pong, where you would serve 5 times each, and no matter who wins the rally, somebody gets a point type of thing. And we did that for 2 years, basically as a gimmick and to see how it worked. But the gimmick of it was to get some butts in the seats. By the 3rd year, we had more than doubled our pro stops that were on the calendar for the year. We had increased our prize money, and we didn't need to use that gimmick anymore. Plus, the feedback we got was that, like I said, it did its job. It got the attention we needed. It got the sponsorships. It got the tournament directors interested. And now with a full schedule and no gimmicks needed, we went back to the straight. It was 3 out of 5 games to 11, win by 2. Kind of never looked back. The tour was able to take off after that, and it's been steadily growing ever since. In fact, I would go so far as to say I think the ladies' professional tour is a bit healthier than the men's. We still don't have equal prize money, which is a crying shame, and we should. However, the tour itself is stable. We're not losing stops. We're running out of available weekends for stops, which is a good problem to have. And our tour also has become so international. I mean, it used to be 95 to 97% Americans on the pro tour, and now it's almost the other way around. There's maybe 5 or 6 of us on the pro tour full time. The rest of the players are from Mexico, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Bolivia. Bolivia has so many great racquetball players. They have native Bolivians playing for other countries because there's so many great Bolivian racquetball players that they just don't have enough spots on their national team for all of them. So you've got Bolivians that are playing for Colombia. You got Bolivians playing for Argentina. You've got Bolivians playing for other countries but for some reason Bolivia just turns out great racquetball players. In fact, I heard recently that racquetball is the second most popular sport in all of Bolivia behind soccer, which is pretty huge when you consider how big soccer is in South America. But anyway, back to your original question, I just sort of happened upon that meeting at National Doubles when I was kind of about at that transition of just making the U.S. national team earlier in my life than I thought I would, and going into the WNBA that I wanted to do. My father and I discussed it at length, and he said, you know what, you've always put racquetball behind basketball. Why don't you give racquetball your full attention for a year and just see what happens? If you don't like it, if it doesn't work out, if it's not your cup of tea, go back to basketball. It's not like you're going to be out of shape, right? So that's that was the plan. That's what we did that first year of the LPRT, and I ended up making the finals of my first ever US Open and ended up finishing my rookie season on the Pro Tour ranked number 3 in the world, and haven't looked back since. It's kind of like I could do this for a while. And so I gave it, another year, and then another year, and then another year. And by then I was all in. I drank all the Kool-Aid, and don't get me wrong, I still miss basketball. Like I said, I'm not going to say that I regret anything I've done in racquetball, but I do regret not giving basketball the chance that I had at that time. Like I said, I knowing what I'm capable of, I honestly don't believe that window has closed for me yet. But you gotta convince the coaches and the staff of that. So we'll see how that goes.
Of course, what was that like? Obviously, getting to make that first U.S. team for racquetball.
I mean, it was incredible, mostly because, like I said, I had started playing at such a young age. My parents divorced when I was 5, and so racquetball kind of became my father's therapy. And so he kind of dove headfirst into being good. I mean, my father was a hell of an athlete. My entire family, I have a ridiculously athletic background. I've got 2 uncles with World Series rings, another uncle who holds the record for the longest punt at the University of Miami, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I came out of the womb, kicking and hitting and shooting and running and jumping. So my father, that, like I said, it kind of became his therapy. It kind of became the thing that he focused on to keep himself healthy. He started going to all the camps and the clinics and started playing the big national tournaments and, doing all those things. So, of course, I went along with him. I remember going to watch him play in his first national championships in Houston. I think I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and I loved it. I had a blast. I didn't play, but I had a blast shooting hoops in between his matches and watching him play. And going up to the top floor of the Hyatt Regency in downtown Houston and throwing paper airplanes down into the lobby. I mean, I got a lot of great memories from those tournaments, even though I wasn't even playing tournaments yet myself. But it was such an honor because I had been around the sport at that level, with my father as a child, and then growing up into it, and then being on the junior team, and then suddenly being alongside those players that I had looked up to. Suddenly playing against Laura Fenton, suddenly being on the court with Cheryl Godinez, stuff like that. It's a thrill. That's Kobe coming into play against Jordan. You know what I mean? These are the players that I've watched, that I've studied, that I've emulated, that I've learned from. And then, oh wait, I get to actually play against you now. Oh wait, I have a chance at beating you right now. It was a big accomplishment. Feeling like I was at least entering in that arena, that my abilities were getting there enough to be a contender.
How did it feel to get to put on that first Team USA jersey for the racquetball?
So that was a pretty powerful moment for me, mostly because I'm an Army brat. My father was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. He served for nearly 40 years. And so just that sense of U.S. pride and country, and it was never lost on me what it meant to literally represent your country in the sport that you love and what you do.
How was it like getting to compete for your first world championship?
Oh, my first world championship. So the first world championships that I qualified to attend as a player was, I believe, in 2004 in Korea. And I had a really bad day at the office against Angela Grosar from Chile. She played great. I could not have hit the ocean from the beach that day. I was just off. But it was a tremendous experience. And it was not my first international experience because, like I said, I had been on the junior team for years. And my first international trip on the junior U.S. team was to Amsterdam for the International Peace Games. And I was a teenager. I think I was probably 15, 16 years old, maybe. So it was a while ago. But that first world championship on the adult team was pretty incredible. And it kind of solidified for me how popular racquetball is, and yet how popular, like, I feel like the world is missing out on such a great sport. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's so much more popular than people give it credit for, but at the same time, it's not as popular as it should be yet. And that's just, I mean, that's marketing, that's media, that's interviews like this, that hopefully somebody will see and be like, oh, I didn't know there was professional racquetball. I can promise you every single flight I have taken in my entire life on my way to a tournament. So what do? I'm a professional. Oh, I didn't know there was a pro tour. I'm like, yep, nobody does. And it's a shame because it really is such a great sport. I mean, you really have to have everything. You have to have strength, speed, agility, reflexes, mental clarity, mental stability. You pretty much have to train as if you played every single sport just to play that one. You've got to have footwork, you've got to have anticipation, you've got to have calmness, you've got to have cardio, you've got to have power, there's just, literally every single thing goes into it. I feel like the world is kind of missing out on it. And that was one of the things that I realized in Korea. I'm like, wow, this facility is outstanding. This tournament is outstanding. Look at all the countries that are here with players that are literally at the elite level to be on their country's national team and compete at this level. Why isn't ESPN here? Why aren't they I mean, even if they're not going to broadcast this on ESPN, why don't they have it, a segment? Even if it's not going to be a segment, why isn't it on the crawl of the screen? Like, so-and-so makes it to the quarterfinals defeating so-and-so in the, round of 16s. Like, it's such a great sport. And the other thing that I find super interesting is, especially on those planes, or even, sit next to somebody at a restaurant or something, and oh, what do you do? Oh, everybody has that racquetball story. Everybody has that racquetball story, or a relative that played racquetball at some point. Everybody has that, oh, I used to play in college. Oh yeah, my brother and I played with my dad all the time. Oh yeah, my dad used to be our state champion. Everybody has that racquetball story, but nobody knows about racquetball at the highest level. And a lot of people don't know. I mean, there's actually, it's gotten a lot better lately in the last decade or so, or two even. It's gotten a lot better with getting racquetball into the schools and the colleges and scholarship programs. And there's a couple of areas in the U.S. that have a very, very highly saturated high school program. One of them is in Oregon. One of them is in St. Louis. There's a lot of other schools that have kind of started to pick up on that. And then the colleges, there's definitely, I'd say a handful of college powerhouses that have really decent teams. And, players that come out of those schools inevitably end up playing the pro tour for at least for some period of time. And that just goes to, it's there. Like as a sport, it's there. We just got to get more people aware of it. We got to get more people aware of it. We got to get more coverage about it. We got to get more sponsors involved. We got to get more grassroots programs and the funding for such in order to keep that beast growing.
How was it like, obviously, getting to go to the Pan American Games and compete at the Pan American?
So Pan American Games are incredible because that's like a mini Olympics basically. It is all the sports. It is all the top athletes from. I mean, the athletes that you see at the Olympics are pretty much the ones you're going to see at the Pan Am Games. And it's such an incredible experience. I think the coolest thing about it is, you get that big gaudy athlete badge that you have to wear everywhere, but it really is an all access key. When we're not playing or practicing or resting or eating, getting ready for our own competitions, we have the ability to go to other venues and watch other athletes and other sports, and other disciplines do their thing. And it's really amazing. And it's cool too when they come to watch us. We just had a similar experience at World Games. It's a very similar platform with, many different athletes across many sports and many countries that are at these big world stage events. And it was awesome to see the beach team handball crew come and support us and sit with us at dinner in the dining hall, and a couple of actually I think the whole ultimate frisbee team came in to watch one of our US teammates on her match. And it's just cool. I sat with some Ukrainians in the dining hall and just said, I'm so glad you guys are here. And they did dance and they were telling me all about their sport and where they compete. And it's just such a cool thing. Like I said, you get to meet athletes and players and even coaches that, where else other than somewhere like that are you going to cross paths? And being able to see other elite athletes in their sport at their venue and they're coming to watch you and yours. It's just a really cool exchange. Lots of t-shirt swapping, hat swapping. I saw a couple of shoes get swapped after an event at one point. But that's the thing that sets apart Pan Am Games and World Games from the other events that are just sport specific only to our own or to their own.
What was it like competing for the IRF World Championship?
So my first World Championship was in 2004. I'm actually leaving on the 17th for our World Championships in San Luis Potosi, Mexico. And I did the math. This would be my 10th World Championships. We have our World Championships every 2 years. COVID threw a little bit of a wrench in that. So we actually had our 2020 World Championships just this past December in Guatemala. And now we're having our regularly scheduled 2022 World Championships in San Luis. But I will say probably the two most prominent World Championships that stand out to me, understandably so because it's the two that I won, were the 2008 and the 2010. The reason why the 2008 was so special for me was because I wasn't even supposed to go. And I don't mean I didn't qualify for the team. I did qualify for the team, but what happened was 6 weeks before the World Championships, I got attacked and assaulted in Hermosa Beach. I got my face shattered, the right side of my face was shattered. I got jumped by two guys with brass knuckles from behind, never saw it coming. I took about 10 to 15 shots to my face and head and had to have facial reconstructive surgery. I lost 37 pounds in 11 days or 14 days. After I got jumped on June 1st, I had facial reconstructive surgery on the 11th, probably, I don't know, by the end of that week after the reconstruction. I had a conversation with our U.S. team head coach, Dave Ellis, at the time, and he said, well, good luck. We're going to be playing our asses off for you. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm going to be there playing my ass off with you guys. And he's like, you're not going. I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, don't you dare take this away from me. World Championships is why I didn't hit back. Literally, while I was getting attacked, I turned around and I squared up. And of course, instinctively, I wanted to hit back, but I didn't because I didn't want to break my hand on his dumb face and not be able to hold my racket and go play. So I wasn't going to swing back to defend myself unless I had to. So once they stopped hitting, I mean, sure, there was some words exchanged and whatnot, but once I wasn't under physical threat anymore, I wasn't going to escalate if I didn't have to. Now, it got a little bit worse a few minutes later, but long story short, there was not another punch thrown and nothing happened after that, except that I went upstairs and I wasn't even thinking of calling 911 or even going to the hospital or any of that. I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't, think anything of it other than like, man, this is going to be really sore in the morning. And I'm thinking, I'm walking home like this because I didn't want my eyeball to fall out. And I'm just thinking like, man, I hope I still have some Advil upstairs because this is going to be really sore in the morning. People saw my face and called 911. And about 2 seconds later, I was on an ambulance on my way to the hospital. Anyway, facial reconstructive surgery. Had the conversation with the head coach of the U.S. team at the time, and he informed me I wouldn't be going and that they would be playing tough in my honor and whatnot. And I'm like, don't take this away from me. I need to go. Like, this is my spot. You can't take this away from me. This is why I didn't hit back. This is what's getting me up in the morning. When that happened, I think I was actually more devastated about that than I was about actually getting my face rearranged. But I was pretty depressed for about 2 or 3 days, and then I realized that I couldn't hold on to that. And I needed to let it go. And the only way for me to let it go was to continue to prepare as if I was going. So I sent an email and I said, pretty much word for word, I still kind of remember what I said. I said, Dear Dave, you go ahead and have all your, or no, I said, Dear Dave, apparently whether or not I go to the World Championships is not up to me. But whether or not I am ready for the World Championships is entirely up to me. So have all the calls and meetings and discussions that you have to with whoever you see fit. In the meantime, I will continue to be prepared. And whether I go to Ireland or not, I will be prepared to be the world champion by July 27th, because that was the date that our flight left. And it was about 2 weeks later, I went and entered 3 divisions in an outdoor tournament against medical advice. I played 3 divisions in an outdoor tournament in Huntington Beach. And the coach, had actually driven down from Stockton to kind of watch me play and evaluate me. And by the end of the tournament, I think I might have won one of the divisions. I don't actually remember, but I remember being pissed that I didn't win all 3. Like, I signed up for 3. I wanted to win all 3. And I was pissed that I didn't. And physically, I was a shell of myself. I mean, I got jumped in June. I wasn't even eating solid food again until October. So but I was just so thrilled to be back out there. And I probably even surprised myself a little bit. I remember the conversation I ended up having with him that allowed me to go on that trip and play for Team USA on that one instead of being replaced. I said, Dave, I don't need my face to hit the ball. My arms and my legs still work. And he kind of laughed and he goes, oh, well, you got a point there. He's like, I can't really argue with that. Made his recommendation to the board that I be allowed to maintain my spot and go and play the World Championships. And I think it was 54 days after getting jumped. I'm sorry, 64 days after getting jumped, 53 days after facial reconstructive surgery, and 29 days after abandoning all pain meds, I won my first World Championship without losing a single game. I never even went tiebreaker. And then being able to defend that in Korea in 2010 was also pretty huge, because it was a heavy weight on my shoulder to almost feel like it wasn't a fluke, that it wasn't, my opponents didn't feel sorry for me in 2008, and they were being kind in any way. Like, it was not that anyone would. I mean, we're all competitors. We all want to. I'll be your best friend off the court. I'll be the first one to buy you a beer off the court. But on the court, we're at each other's throats for good reason. Everyone's competitive. Everyone wants to win. It was just I don't want to say it felt like a validation, but it was nice to know for myself that I did that under all sets of circumstances that I came through. My biggest fear after finally getting the green light that I was going to, okay, fine, you can keep your spot, you can go to Worlds in 2008, was, I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to be the weak link. I don't want to be the one that disappoints Team USA. I don't want to be, the weak link on this team. And I wasn't. And in fact, that was probably one of the strongest teams I've ever been on. Team USA swept that event in 2008, the one that I almost didn't go to. We had an all USA final. We had both Team USA women's players in the singles final. We had both Team USA men in the men's final, and our men's doubles team and women's doubles team also won their divisions. So we swept the individual medals. We swept all the team trophies. That was in 2010, and I'm not sure that we've swept everything to the extent that we did that year.
Of course, what does it mean to be a U.S. racquetball player?
So our qualification systems have changed over the years, but currently it is the finalists of the singles divisions at national singles. So the 2 men and 2 women, and the winning doubles team of national doubles. And the finalists are also on the team at national doubles as well, but they're alternates. If you place first or second in singles and you win doubles, you're going to Pan Ams, you're going to Worlds, you're going to the next international event, unless something happens, be it an injury, personal withdrawal, something unfortunate timing wise for you. In our case, we've had pregnancies that didn't coincide with competition. You're on the team, and if you place third or fourth in singles, or if you place second in doubles, you are still on your team, and you're kind of on deck in case you need to fill in somewhere.
Who are some of the influential people in your career that have shaped you into the racquetball player that you are?
Jim Winterton, for sure, my coach. He's been my coach since I was about 14. I was on the junior U.S. team. He was one of the coaches at the tryout camp that you had to, as a junior. This has also changed over the years, but I'm not a junior anymore, so I haven't really paid attention. But it used to be when I was on the junior team, you had to submit an essay, you had to submit your grades, you had to submit 3 letters of reference, and you had to be good enough for them to kind of know your name and know who you are. And then they would select 22 males and 22 females. So you had 44 juniors vying for 16 spots, 8 men and 8 women. And I remember I went to my first U.S. junior team tryout, and I was told the reason I didn't get selected was because I was actually too young. I was 14, and there was older kids that had more experience than I did and whatnot. And I qualified to be old enough to go attend the training camp, the tryout for a week at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, but I wasn't old enough to pull through the way they wanted me to, I guess, internationally yet. But I made the team the following year, and I made it every year since, as long as I was young enough to be on the junior team. Jim Winterton was the coach of the junior team, and he was one of the coaches at that tryout camp as well. And I just learned so much from him the whole time that I was growing into my own athletic self, my own aspirations, my own achieving my goals. And he's been by my side ever since. Can't say enough about the guy. But I mean, I also have to give credit to the females that I watched growing up as a kid. Michelle Gould, Lynn Adams, Cheryl Godinez, Jackie and Joy Parizzo, Laura Fenton, Tony Bevelock. I mean, these are Robin Levine. These are all athletes that I watched, and they were the ones at the top when I was a little kid. When my dad wouldn't let me play tournaments until I was 10 for some unknown reason, and these were the people that I was watching before I was even allowed to play a tournament. So it was again, it was one of those moments that several years into my career, after I had already been on the U.S. team for several years, after I had already been #1 in the world for a couple of years, and realizing that, oh man, I've actually, like, these people are the ones that put it in my head that I could be the best in the world, and now I actually am. Like, they definitely had a lot to do with laying the groundwork for me to be able to have that opportunity and to actually achieve it.
What are some of your future plans in the sport of racquetball?
I've said it for a long time. It's just a lot harder than I thought it would be. But I mean, it personally. I mean, of course, I'm a competitor. I compete with myself. If you don't have a challenge in front of me, I'll put one there myself, which is not necessarily a good thing all the time. But I want to win worlds in the immediate future. I want to win worlds. I would like to win the U.S. Open again. But my overall goal, those are just personal goals. But at the same time, other than my competitive drive fueling that so intensely, I've literally won everything there is to win at least twice. So it's not about the titles, it's not about the records, it's not about any of that for me, but it's about my own personal growth and continuing to improve as an athlete. It's continuing to get better. It's continuing to be able to do things that are easy now that used to be hard for me a year ago or even 6 months ago. Like, I can hit, I have so much more confidence in my serves now. I have so much more dynamic shot making ability now than I used to. So just my own personal growth as an athlete is in there, but it's not about the titles. And for the sport, more so, my biggest goal is and has always been, like, I want to do for racquetball what Tony Hawk did for skateboarding. I want it to be that. I don't want it to be a niche sport. I want it to be popular. I want it to be on ESPN. I want it to be mainstream. And my example that I use in what I hope to see racquetball become in my lifetime, whether I have anything to do with it or not, I think the sport itself deserves it. I think the blueprint to follow would be look at the UFC. UFC was very much an underground sport. It was very much an underground, if you knew, you knew, but if you didn't know, you had no idea. And that's kind of where racquetball's at right now. And I feel like racquetball as a game itself definitely has the potential and should be as well known as, uh, I'm not even talking about myself, but I'm saying the racquetball players that I play alongside, definitely have the ability, the personality, the character, and even the photogenic ability to be the household names that UFC athletes are. If you say John Jones or Chuck Liddell or Conor McGregor, I mean, even if you don't watch UFC, you have at least heard of them, right? You've at least seen a clip of somebody getting, you know, tapping out on in the octagon. But nobody sees Cain Rosalenchuk hitting a between the legs rollout, falling backwards off the back wall, and they should. It's the athleticism and the timing and the power and grace all at the same time that are always happening on pretty much every single shot and every single movement in the sport.
What advice would you give future people in college looking to play racquetball?
I would probably say, I mean, obviously the work ethic obviously has to be there. I mean, you can't graduate to the next level of anything without that. Um, Also, I would be careful not to, and by all means, I know racquetball is just not a one size fits all sport, and everyone's kind of got their thing that works for them. But I would caution against, and this is for racquetball or anyone, I would caution against too many cooks in the kitchen. Especially when you're just starting out, you got a handful of people are genuinely just want to see you do well and really do want to help you. That doesn't mean that they necessarily know exactly what they're talking about. And that honestly, that goes for anyone. Like I said, it's not a one side. Like what works for me doesn't always work for somebody else. I'm not going to coach somebody to play the way that I play. I'm going to coach them based on their strengths and weaknesses. I'm also not going to, recommend that somebody has, like 7 different coaches. If somebody's got different coaching systems, or, you got to give everything a bit of time to sink in. You got to give, you know, you've got to put in the work to find out if the coach you're listening to is actually helping you. And there's different ways of measuring that. And like I said, it sounds like I'm being like way too cautionary, but it can be overwhelming when everyone's kind of coming at you, telling you something different. Hey, if you really want to up your game, you got to do this. 10 minutes later, somebody says the exact opposite for the same reason. Like, hey, if you want to win that match next time, here's what you got to do. And that's completely the opposite of what this other person said a minute ago. So, I would say first and foremost, you got to believe in yourself and take to heart, the support system that you have around you. And not everybody deserves to be your friend. Keep your circle small. Listen to who you trust, and if you don't trust someone, take it all with a grain of salt.
Of course, what advice would you give those college players that are looking to make the professional racquetball team?
It's a lot faster and it's a lot more precise. So I would say start working on your precision. Start working on your percentages. Start working on your serves and your serve returns and ceiling balls. Make sure the ceiling balls don't come off the back wall. I mean, it's the game itself is very simple. Hit it where your opponent's not. All the different ways to go about that are, kind of for you to figure out your own roadmap to what works best for you.
What advice would you give those rookies that are entering the U.S. racquetball team?
Rookies on the U.S. team, be a good teammate. Be a good teammate. And that sounds so simple and so cliche, but this is a sport where 99% of the year we are all playing against each other, and then once or twice a year we are on the same team together. And we need to, I mean, I've literally had it where I just finished beating someone or getting my butt kicked by someone, and then 3 days later we're sitting next to each other on the plane on the way to Pan Am's, and we're rooming together. So it's a different feel. It's a different vibe when you're by yourself and you're constantly out for blood against everyone. And now when you actually have a team in an individual sport, you actually have a team to support you. It's a pretty incredible feeling to look back and see your teammates all in the same uniform that you're wearing are cheering for you, when 3 days ago you were getting coached and playing against each other. So it's take advantage of having that team unity, that team bonding, and that team energy behind you, and do your part. Be a good teammate. Go support your teammates as well when they're playing.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the U.S. Racquetball?
So USA Racquetball, you can find that under the menu of the teamusa.org. It's the whole like site for all of the U.S. national teams and all the sports, all the disciplines. My social, I have Facebook, but I am locked out of it currently. I'm working on that. But I do have a Facebook. It's Rhonda Rajsich. My Instagram is Rhonda Rocks 23, and my Twitter is @RonDeezy, DeeZee, RonDeeZee.
Thank you again, Ron DG, for your interview, and best luck in your future in the racquetball.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Rhonda, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thanks.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.